we've talked about the grand scheme of things in Dallas. We know how wild the atmosphere, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, is around this team, not just with the fans and their expectations and how high they are, but the owner, uh, just in general, the contract situations for the big three that are involved add to the level of drama. CD Lamb holding out right now, hasn't traveled with the team to California for when their practices will get started tomorrow. All of this puts the team in a great amount of flux after an offseason, as you mentioned, Joe, right off the top, really, an offseason of inaction. A head coach who's on a very warm, if not officially hot seat. The big three that we're talking about playing for contracts if they don't get them before the season starts, in Lamb's case, and a division rival who did go out and try to address all of the holes on their roster that needed to be patched. We talked about the Eagles yesterday. If you missed that, by all means, go download it. Search BetQL Daily wherever you get your podcast. But there's a reason the books have them at a solid 10 wins without actually posting 10 wins, as we just talked about. Heavily juiced under 10.5 and over 9.5, and pretty decent plus money over 10.5 and under 9.5. They are looked at as a 10-win team. Despite being favored right now, preseason, in 12 of their 17 games, and 6 of those games by more than a field goal. It's tough to get it is technically, if we go by Sharp Football, who we've used for a lot of the strength of schedule analysis during this series, it is technically the 11th most difficult schedule in the league based on opponent win totals. Second hardest in the NFC, though. So, it's not going to be as easy as last year. They've lost some things on both sides of the ball, and there's a lot of uncertainty on both sides of the ball, despite some elite level star power on both sides of the ball. We just got done. One of the final things we wrapped up with RJ with was Lamb and Parsons and what they're both capable of. Both posted in their respective offensive and defensive player of the year markets pretty high. All of it brings me around to this is a 9 or 10 win team, I think, as I look at it, Joe. They're going to be, I think, not depending on how the season starts, I think they could be right there in the conversation with Philly most of the year. Depends how those two games head to head with Philly go, which don't get played until later in the season. But I can't see Dallas winning more than 10 games. That's a real tough ask for me. If I had to choose between that over 10.5 and under 9.5 number, I'm probably leaning on the under. Like this could be a 9-8 team, and if things don't go well, could be an 8-9 team that misses the playoffs.
Looking at the schedule, I thought like those rankings of win total, when you look at the schedule, that it would say it was a lot tougher, because as I go through it, I'm like, ooh, go to Cleveland to start the year. Really? The Cowboys are preseason favorite in week 3 against Baltimore. I can't wait to take Baltimore in that spot. I don't care that the Dallas Cowboys are at home.
You think they
it's
still
never
will
easy
from week 3?
No. It's never easy to go to Pittsburgh at back-to-back weeks. You've got the Lions, the Niners, and then the Falcons and Eagles. That's a tough month. Oh, by the way, after the Eagles, you got the Texans. I'm shocked that it's not ranked as one of the more difficult, like 5 to 10 most difficult, because I think they should certainly be there. In Cincinnati later in the season, Eagles at the Eagles, second to last week. This looks like a very difficult schedule, much more challenging than it was a year ago. And I'm with Choppy. I have concerns about this defense. They're thin. He mentioned all the new linebackers, and you have a new D coordinator. And to expect the amount of touchdowns that they've been getting the last couple of years on the defensive end, it's not a sustainable thing. So that should be a big concern. And now I know Tyron Smith has missed a lot of games over the last couple of years, but he's not there any weeks. At least he was giving you some play over the last few years. Now he's gone, and you lose the most important position on the line. Now you lose your center too. Your left tackle and your center are gone. What the hell? This is why people keep saying, why aren't the Cowboys doing anything? They're losing. Yes, Zeke sucks at this stage. You know who else sucked? Tony Pollard last year. But He was available every week, and at the end of the season,
Yeah.
he gave you 1,000 yards. Zeke's not doing that. He's not. I want to play under, but the markets know this, and the number is so short on Zeke. It's 575.5 on the rushing
Yeah.
yards. I might go under on the rushing touchdowns, though, because that's 5.5. Pollard, with this explosive offense, was available for 17 games, and he only had 6 rushing touchdowns. So maybe you go Zeke, a guy that's not going to give you more than 3 yards a pop, and maybe the second half of the season he's not playing. It's a lot less of Zeke. So injury possibility as well. I was looking at under 5.5 rushing touchdowns for Zeke. I want to take under 9.5 at the plus money, but it's just you've got the elite wide receiver one. You've got the elite guy on the edge. There's just when they have an easy opponent, they're going to smash them. There are guaranteed wins in the schedule, a handful of them, and that's what scares me about going under 9.5.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, especially in the back half of the season when you look at it. Like you push beyond that Houston game on a Monday night in week 11 that you mentioned, Joe, and then it's at Washington, Giants at home on Thanksgiving. You get past the Cincinnati game on a Monday night, and then you've got at Carolina, Tampa Bay at home on a Sunday night, at Philly, and then you wrap up at home against Washington. There's at least
There's a lot of
4 wins there. Yeah, at least 4. The question for this team is, can they get through the first 10 games at 500? If they get through the first 10 games at 500, 5-5, then they've got a chance, because then all you've got to do, I think, is steal a game against, I don't know, a division rival in Philly or against Cincy or Houston. And those are both at home, right? In prime time, a spot where the Cowboys can thrive. So if you can steal one of those, you can get to 10 wins. I just think that's asking for a lot. And to loop back around on what you mentioned, which is what Choppy brought up about the defense, and to focus in on Parsons for just a second. Like I said, I firmly believe he's the most impactful player on this roster, Lamb included. And it makes sense for him to be a favorite for Defensive Player of the Year, 550, wherever you find it. But the problem then comes in, as we've talked about Defensive Player of the Year, you've got to be the best player on a at least good defense. It doesn't have to be great, but at least good. And if this defense struggles this year, I don't know if Parsons has a shot. That 5-1 number becomes way, way, way too short.